Hello, it's Clive to Carle, and I'm joined today by Stuart Morris. And I think, as everybody knows, healing has sort of three basic components. There's the physical component, have you got the nutrition to be well? Then there's the emotional component, have you forgiven people who did the wrong thing? Have you forgiven yourself? Have you got to that stage of gratitude that even when you're ill, if you can switch it from, oh my God, I'm suffering, to I'm grateful to this. I don't know why it's hurting so much, but it must be happening for a reason to do with my growth. Getting over the past is a big one. Then there's the spiritual element to healing. And somebody told me the other day that I'm not paying enough attention to that side of it. So I started thinking this morning, well, you can measure pain levels, for instance. You can quantify a cancer, a stage 1 or stage 4. You can look at emotional distress and you can sort of quantify it by saying, well, that person's got PTSD or whatever it is. And I was thinking, well, how do you quantify spirituality, and actually what is it? And I thought along the way, once you've told the audience a little bit about who you are and what you do, you might want to address, well, what is spirituality, and how do you know if you've got a deficiency or too much, or is that possible? That kind of thing.
Yeah. So do you want me to carry on and just kind of tell you a little bit about where I come from and how it began, that story?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think we all have these sort of aha moments that perhaps something occurs and it totally changes our whole view of everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, please start right at the beginning if you like.
So when I was a child of about probably 5 or 6, I was always ill. I was a very weak child, and Mum and Dad used to have me in their room next to them, and I used to be in a little bed by their side. And they used to have like this picture on the wall, and it was plugged in, and there used to be 3 cats on this picture. It was like a glow lamp, if you like, of its time. I mean, I'm going back, 55 years or so now. So it was a glow lamp of its time. And I remember even now, I'm 61 now, 50 odd years later, 50 something years later, I remember this picture changing, and a face came onto the picture. I mean, I thought it was Jesus, because it was the only kind of thing that I could relate to later on. I didn't know at the time what it was, or I'd just seen this face appear, and then it went fine. After that, I started to pick up as a child and went about my business like every other kid round our end. And most of the lads round my end used to live in Birmingham city centre itself. We ended up as market lads, or we ended up as builders, and I did both. First of all, I was a market lad for a while, and then I was in the building trade. And then I used to go out with a girl in my old school. We met up again when I was just about 20 or so and hooked up together. Anyway, long story short, we ended up together, had a child, and then things started to get a little bit stressful for me. Not a little bit, they become very, very stressful. I was diagnosed with chronic anxiety. The relationship broke down to the point where I really couldn't see a way out. I didn't want to live. I was like suicidal almost, just so depressed, so anxious. I was working all day, coming back, and my whole body started to shut down. And free-floating anxiety, panic attack after panic attack, all kinds of terrible, terrible kind of things, really. And every symptom of anxiety I think I'd experienced at that time. Anyway, I remember sitting on the stairs. Things were so bad for me at one point, or so I thought at the time, is that I said, take me. I can't find a way out. Take me. What I meant was, let me die, because I couldn't find a way out. And then some months later, I was walking back from work, and I had this lump come up in my groin, and I couldn't hardly walk. And went round to the doctors, and they said, put this cream on it, he said, and if it gets any worse, come back. Well, it did get worse. It got worse that night, and Luckily for me, there's a local hospital. We hobbled around, me and my ex there at the time, hobbled around. We had a 2-year-old daughter, and she was pregnant with my son, who's in his 30s. Anyway, so they prodded and poked me in the hospital, and then I started to deteriorate that night, and so much so, like the priest come round on the night and give me the kind of, went over my head with a cross and so forth. I was really, really ill. I was very ill in a short space of time. Anyway, long story short, they removed a tumor, and that tumor turned out to be, well, he said, the consultant said, it's an unusual shape, he said. And when it turned out to be something called non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So I was only 26. I had a 2-year-old daughter, and my ex was pregnant with my son. He was about 4 months. She was about 4 months pregnant. We had no money. I couldn't work the markets, couldn't do the bricklaying, so I was in a not very good position. Anyway, I had some treatment, and before my diagnosis, I wanted to die. I really did. I was so unhappy. And then something stirred in me, and I couldn't tell you what that was. I can't even say it was down to any one particular thing, but something stirred in me and began to want to live. It's a strange thing. It just, some part of me began to stir. I remember going to the consultant, and he said, like, Stuart, you need to relax. And I thought, well, that's easy for you to say, because he was a nice man, but it was easy for him to say. We had no money. We were in, not a very good position. And I think I was given a prognosis of like 5 years or so of surviving, 60% chance of surviving 5 years. And at 26 years old, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And my mum said to me, have you ever been to yoga? And don't forget, I was a market lad, a builder. Nothing could be more foreign to me. However, something deep inside of me, just said, this is something perhaps you need to look at. So I remember going down to this old yoga class, and at the bottom of the road, and I looked through the window, there was all these women in there, and I thought, I'm just going to hide at the back of the class, set myself off. And that's what I did. I went to the class, hid at the back of the class, and this lady was teaching yoga, but she was teaching more meditation and more relaxation. And as she began to lay down, I heard a voice. And the voice said, learn to forgive again and again and again. And I literally sat up, because it was almost as if someone was talking it to me. And I don't know if it was in me, around me, or whatever it was. And I can't say it was like we said with some authority, but the voice had a resonance that it would not leave me alone. And so I went in search of forgiveness, and I have a very different opinion of forgiveness than most on the back of that. But, it took me about 10 years or so to reach a conclusion that become a working model for me. So I continued to go to the yoga, and something called Raj Yoga around the same time. I started to have some radiotherapy. I started to change my diet and detox and lots of other things along the way. And I went to this Raj Yoga class, and the man was talking to me about meditation again. First time I've ever been to anything like this. And he started to talk about the supreme soul and God, and we did this meditation, and something entered the room. Now, I can tell you, it was tangible. It was almost as though somebody had opened the door, and literally this feeling of peace came in. And I couldn't tell you what that was. And when I come away from that day, I thought, was that in my imagination? Did I imagine that, And then later on, I found that this particular tutor rang his teacher and said, I've just witnessed something extraordinary. And it was extraordinary, because to this day, I always think that was the day something happened to me. I think that was the day the cancer cell in my body began to turn off. Don't get me wrong, it was a long process to recover. In fact, it took me about 6 or 7 years. That's the honest truth. But within that time, I began to discover meaning and purpose in my life, and started doing the holistic therapies for my own survival. Did aromatherapy, reflexology, nutrition, herbs, I started to train pranayama yoga and so forth. And all of these things began to refill me, recharge me, replenish me. But something extraordinary apart from that was going on that I didn't really understand at the time. In other words, this voice that I heard started to come back intermittently, and there would be profound statements from the same source, whatever that was at that time, over a period of maybe 20 or 30 years. Not a lot, maybe 5 or 6 different statements. And so I began to train, qualify, and I used to go to, after radiotherapy, go to a healer. And at the bottom of the QE hospital, just this old lady. And she'd say to me, you know, Stuart, you expect God to come down and sit by your side and tell you things. Well, actually, she was right. And I did. It was along those kind of lines that almost I was starting to listen to something outside of me. And that's never really left me, but it was intermittent. So eventually I trained and began to do the aromatherapy and reflexology and all the different things, started to teach pranayama yoga, and ran the complementary medical center in the Monroe Center in Birmingham University, and ran that for about 10 years, still starting to get my experience. Perhaps moving away from the spirituality side of it, more towards the physicality, if you like. I treat a lot of rugby players and students, but more physical, hands-on than spirituality. Until I met my wife, who's my current wife now, who's a medium, maybe about 7, 8 years ago. And I always give mediums a wide berth, because it was like I go to sometimes the spiritualist churches, and it was that hierarchy, and I didn't quite like that. I liked the philosophy, I didn't understand it, but I didn't like the dynamics that I saw. So I always give it a wide berth. And that's irony in itself, really, that I actually met a medium who turned out to be might turn out to be a medium. And then in 2017, she said, do you want to come to the Spiritualist Church in King's Heath with me? And I thought, well, I'll pop along and have a look. By this time, I'd, developed my own practice. We've established Birmingham Holistic Health Centre for, 20 years or so. And I was going about my business in my own quiet way, I suppose, really, just doing what I do to the best of my ability. Went to this spiritualist church in 2017, sat there minding my own business while my wife was kind of talking to people, and this old lady come over to me and she said, have you heard of a man called Harry Edwards? I said, I have. I said, but I don't know anything about him. She said, well, we travelled with him, me and Don. Don was the other man who ran the church, and they were in, like, Don was about 80 odd and Pam was about the same kind of age, and they travelled with Harry Edwards for 20 odd years, they said. And she said, Harry, give me a book. Harry Edwards gave me 2 books, she said, and he signed them both, and I want to give you one of the books. I said, why would you want to give me one of the books? You've only just met me. You don't know nothing about me. She said, you have the same energy as him. Now, for some reason, Clive, I don't know why, but I couldn't get it out of my head. It was just, it toyed with my head. And then I researched Harry Edwards Sanctuary and found out a little bit more, and found they had an open day. By this time, I'd done all the training. I didn't want to do any more. And I thought, well, I'll go down and I'll have a look at this open day. And if the course is right for me, I'll join it. So I'm driving this particular day to the open day, not really knowing what I was going for. Just I needed some validation, if you like, to say this healing course was for me. I wanted a thunderbolt angel, something extraordinary before I was going to make a decision, because I'd done all that. I didn't want to do any more training. And going past London, 2.5, 3 hours in, the traffic was dire. And so in my mind, I'm having a rant, in the car at Harry Edwards. Why do you want to put a place in the middle of nowhere? Why stick a place like in this? Because I was moaning about the journey itself. An hour or so later, I've got there, walked around this place where they had the open day, different people doing different things. And I didn't get that sign. I didn't get whatever it was that I felt was right for me. So on the way out, I'm going home. On the way out, I saw the receptionist and I said, I wanted a sign, thunderbolts, some angels, some trumpets, something to tell me this course is for me. And she said, have you been round the back? That's where Harry used to walk, Cherry Tree Walk. And she said, he used to walk there every morning. Go there before you go. I thought, well, I'll have a look. Anyway, I walked down and walked around and sat down on this bench and closed my eyes. And then I heard a voice. And it said, you asked a stupid question. Now, remember, I'm having a rant, why put this place in the middle of nowhere? And it wasn't a thunderbolt from, God or anything like, or lightning or trumpets. It was a simple, direct answer, because the very fact that I'm looking at this beautiful view told me, that I recognized the voice as the same voice I'd heard intermittently 6 or 7 times over 20, 30 years. And then the voice continued. I know it sounds strange and bizarre, but it's God's honest truth. And he said, I'm not the divinity, but I'm a voice connected to the divinity. I'm the one who can open up your mind to the presence of God. And that's how it began. And so from that, I recognized some resonance in that voice outside of myself. I was thinking, was it my subconscious? Was it A, B, C, and D? In the end, I went with the course and started to do the 2-year course at Harry Edwards. And then the dialogue began as soon as I started that course. And I would write notes, in the course. And that course, the notes became a book. And then the book became a course which I'm teaching now about spiritual healing. Now, it wasn't a kind of, a process that overnight I decided to do that. There was lots of different synchronicities and coincidences that made me do this, really. And one of them was when I published the book, and it was just self-published, there was I was doing something for Harry Edwards every couple of weeks, like a meditation. And I've never ever read a book by Harry Edwards when I was down there, not one. And I did that purposely because I would take these notes, this dialogue. Anyway, in about a year and a half ago, which wasn't very long, maybe even a year ago, I saw on eBay someone was selling a talk of Harry Edwards that was recorded perhaps 60 years ago, of him doing a talk, a lecture. And so I thought, I'll get that, I'll have a listen to it. And one night after work, I put the CD in, I'm driving home, and I heard about 3 or 4 lines from this lecture that Harry did perhaps 60 years ago, maybe more, I don't know. And word for word, it was what it was in the book. And I had to pull over the side of the road and ring my sister. I said, if ever I had any doubt that I was making this stuff up, I had no possible access other than the ether to get that information, because word for word, it was what Harry had said 60 years ago in a lecture. And that's when things started to change for me, because up to that point, if I'm honest with you, Clive, and I was thinking, am I making this up? Is this really me? Is it my subconscious? And da, 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 until that. And I know 100% within me, I had no access to that information other than the ether. So the dialogue's never stopped. And it's become a book that's become a course. And it is beautiful. It's a beautiful philosophy. Now, I think the philosophy was for me, to imbibe, but that ego part of me, I guess, really wanted to make it a book, and it is a book, but really it was for me and first and foremost. However, after that time when I heard that voice, I realized that this is something that needs to be shared, and people can make of it what they like, but it is a beautiful philosophy, some incredible, profound quotes. And it's the same voice that's been with me, I guess, all of my life, but I didn't know who that was. And that's how they introduced themselves to me. And that's what happened. So now, primarily, I've moved away from the physicality more to do with the spiritual healing. I asked Harry, you know, what's spiritual healing? And he said, take the idea of energy existing first and foremost. And from the concept of energy as light, you can bring forward the light to someone whose light's become dim. He said, what happens is the energy, the light passes through pathways in the nervous system. He didn't say chakras. He said hidden points. He said they pass through hidden points in the nervous system to bring about emotional relief. Well, that's pretty clear to me. You know, you can tell I'm a pretty grounded man. You know, my background's in building and bricklaying and so forth, but I like to build a foundation, and I'm simple, really. So I understood that. You know, you take the idea of energy existing first and foremost. Fine, I get that. Because I was the greatest skeptic, you know, and have been most of my life. That's the irony of all of this spiritual healing. There's no doubt that the doctor saved my life at the time in the hospital, but what I did after that made the difference. And that's why I'm still here now, still able to talk to you. And I know what it's like to be ill. I know what it's like to see someone you love be ill. I'll give you another profound quote. When my ex-wife and I split up, my son became ill. And he went down to 5 stone in weight. Eventually, we got a diagnosis of Crohn's disease. But at the time, he was deteriorating quite badly and tube-fed bleeding inside, and we really couldn't, you know, find the measure of it. And here I am, you know, so-called expert in lots of these different things. And I remember holding him in my kitchen one day, you know, Harry, help me. And I heard the same voice, and it says, love is the only true healing balm applied when necessary to oneself and others. And I thought, what am I going to do with that? And yet it's a beautiful quote. You know, some other quotes like peace is the greatest ambassador for change in oneself and others. And all of these quotes, you could spend weeks, months meditating, thinking about them. You said about spirituality. Well, my own take, not Harry, I think like spirituality is about becoming more human, and healing's about love. Therefore, in essence, spiritual healing really is about human love. That's the irony. That makes sense. So that's the place I'm coming from, and I'm still trying to make sense of it, but it's what happened.
And if you wanted to impart that knowledge as to how to make that connection as you did, how would people go about trying to make a connection as powerful as that?
I think because I was so ill at the time, I used to spend I was maybe a year or two on my back because I was so ill. And people would come and go, you know, and mostly I was on my own. And because I had nothing and no one or felt like it, I would connect to something bigger than me through meditation. And Harry said to me that stillness is a portal. So when you're still, this portal, these energies come through, healing energies, insight, wisdom, abundance in that portal of stillness. So meditation is certainly one way to develop that relationship. It's like any relationship. I think everything's a relationship. And the more you do it, the more you develop it, the more you spend time nurturing that relationship, the stronger it grows. So meditation is definitely one way of connecting to that voice. And everybody has it. Everybody's connected. Harry said to me, what you're doing isn't special. He said the specialness comes from the understanding that it's not special. You know, we talk a lot about, you know, kind of mind, body, spirit. So our ancestors, you know, like they would go around touching the earth with their feet and their senses, and they would feel the resonance of the earth. Certain places like would have a higher vibration. You know, they build monuments, Stonehenge, and monuments all over the world. So we know our ancestors, and so do we kind of can feel these energies in the earth. But we're also connected to the divinity in the same way. You know, we can connect to these healing energies that are freely available. You know, that if we kind of just be still and kind of allow them to come through. So I think the Trinity, the Holy Trinity, is misunderstood. I think the mind, body, spirit is the connection to the earth. You know, Harry said, if you want peace of mind, spend more time in nature, for what the eye doesn't see has a resonance far more powerful than you realize on this earth. In other words, he said, soak up and imbibe the hidden energies within nature. So we know that. So we're connected to the earth, and we're connected to the...
I've lost your sound.
And it's open to your interpretation, the same as the book and the course. You know, so when I'm teaching the course, I'm just sharing this idea. What do you think? Because I'm still trying to make sense of it, and I am. However, I've seen some amazing things. I'll give you one briefly. My wife was being ill for 9 months, and recently, so these last 12 months or so, last 9 months, she was ill, and I was to and fro in the hospital. I was exhausted, really, to be honest, working in hospital. And there used to be a little chapel I would go to, and I would sit there and I would pray, Harry, God, universe, whatever name you want to call it, for me, help me. God, please show me I'm not alone. And I would sit there sometimes it'd be dark, and I would openly weep, at the predicament we were in. But I would ask for that strength. Show me I'm not alone. And then about 2 months ago, we had a show at the NEC, and I'm walking around the NEC. There's about 500 people there. There's a house show, and I was looking for this device I was looking at. And I'm standing there, and this old lady come next to me, just like, I don't say she appeared, but I just turned around and I saw her. But she looked me in the eye, Clive, and she said, God wants you to know he's with you. I said, pardon me? God wants you to know he's with you. Bearing in mind, this is my prayer. Show me I'm not alone. I mean, what's the chances of that? Don't you think that's quite bizarre? So I sat there and I said, I've been round here and I've seen all these different people and a lot of egos and all the rest of it. I said, but that means more to me than you'll ever know. She said, I don't do this type of work anymore. She said, I'm in my 80s. She said, but I've come to tell you that. And then I give her this hug and she was gone. And I thought, did that just happen? So my life has been not littered, because that's not the right word. It permeates with these synchronicities and coincidence. In coincidence, I was told a long time ago, is God's way of remaining anonymous. You see, we're given what we need in the moment, aren't we? Just like you, me, all of us. And you can never define healing. How can we? Because if you're broken, someone gives you a £10 note, that's an easy healing. If you're feeling a little bit low and someone says, you know what, Stu, you're a good man, that's healing. So we can never define healing, never. It comes to us in the right way for us. So our spirituality is whatever we want it to be. Truly. Interesting, isn't it?
It is fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. So the name of your book?
It's called In the Company of Harry. In the Company of Harry, and which is literally what we're doing. We're in the company of Harry. Because Harry he didn't introduce himself to me as Harry Edwards. He said, I'm a voice connected to the divinity. I mean, what a profound thing to hear, Clive. I'm the one who can open up your mind to the presence of God. And I think he has, because it's changed my life. When you look back on your life and my life, I think there's been certain things, a lot of terrible things have happened that have changed the course of my life. They've turned out to be the catalyst of me growing in so many ways. Although I didn't see that at the time, who does? When you're going through terrible things, who can see the goodness? I know it's there, but you can't see. I wouldn't have bothered coming out of the womb if I thought it was going to be like this at times. I'd have stayed where I was. And yet, out of that has come something extraordinary, because I understand much more now than I ever did. And I'm still learning, still growing. And I think it's fascinating, painful, happy, all of those different things. But we can co-create something more. That's why I never get low. When I see people like with cancers and so forth, I used to work in a hospice for 3 years. I never ever felt low, only once. But apart from that, you know, because it's given us there's something more we can tap into, and that philosophy and our perception of life makes a huge difference to the way we move through it. That's spirituality, isn't it? It's a philosophy that we can use.
And you're seeing clients who come to you?
I do, yeah. I see regular clients, I've done for years, but I say really now more so, the healing I get for life, if you like, a new thing that I want to change the perception of spiritual healing. That's what I'd like to do. It's not wooey. I'm about as grounded as they come. All I can tell you is the truth. Make of it what you want. I've had people come who've been paid out on their life insurance and still here today. And I've seen people who've been paid out on their life insurance and not survive. I don't know the answers, but I do know that our perception plays a part sometimes in some forms of cancer and some disease. I've never ever seen anyone survive, long term without applying and taking responsibility for part of that healing journey. Personally, I haven't. I'd like to say I have, but I haven't. I think to be proactive, if nothing else, at the very least, empowers you. And that empowerment can only have a beneficial effect on your immune system. I remember talking to my consultant, and I said, I think it's stress that caused this. No, Stuart, he said, we haven't got the evidence for that. He said, we think it's to do with a virus called Epstein-Barr virus. So I researched that, and I realized and understood that Epstein-Barr virus, is connected with so many different variations of different names of diseases. However, when your immune system's suppressed through stress, whatever genetic predispositions you may have may manifest, in that form of disease in any way. Nothing will convince me less that I still believe that there was a lot of things involved in me becoming ill, and stress was perhaps the biggest factor for me. So I think sometimes if I can deal with someone's stress, then it's going to help their immune system at the very least. And then the supporting cast with the herbs and the nutrition. And Harry told me that the spiritual healing overrides everything. Well, the more I delve into this and the more I experience it, I think it definitely plays an important role, an important part. We'll see.
Well, it certainly does. And one of the things that changed my way of thinking about things, which was that I had this chap come to me, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago or something, who had eyesight problems, he was in pain, and he had brain fog. And at that point, I was using frequency devices, and I got 4 of them, and I wired them up to these 4 devices. At the end of an hour, pain gone, eyesight fine, memory back, and I glanced over, and I'd forgotten to switch the machines on.
That's amazing, isn't it? You see what a part that plays really in our mindset, the kind of power of placebo and non-placebo and so forth. And Harry had that in abundance, when I kind of listened to him, he had that great belief. I always think like some of the therapists that come to me, whether they're acupuncturist or massage therapist, I say, you can be trained in any discipline you like. And whatever's in you will come through the needle or through the massage or through this, but something passes through. The medium by which you give by is secondary to you, and some people you just feel better in their presence, don't you? For sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
The way I kind of look at it is like, I've got a key fob that may open my car. It won't open yours. And with the spiritual healing, if we can find the right, because Harry said like the right type of healing will come through for each individual, and I find that really interesting. So it's not like a key fob, can I find the remote for you? But not me. I remember saying to Harry, like I was asked to go and see a young child in the hospice, and I was nervous. And in this dialogue, I said, Harry, I said, I'm a bit nervous about going. He said, what's he got to do with you? In other words, get me out the equation. If ever I was kind of, my ego, not my ego, if ever I was kind of thinking it was anything to do with me, I was wrong, because it's not. And I don't mean that to be cliche. I genuinely do intend to help people. That's always been my intention. But if I get out the way, whatever it is works so much better. Because if I'm there kind of doing my bit, that's my intention. But there is an energy so much more powerful than us, I believe, than me. That's the truth of all of that. And I'm still trying to figure that out. But when I'm aligned to it, I feel better. And when I'm in the presence of it, I feel better. Well, that'll do. I love that.
The problem is that people went to child indoctrination camp for the first 10 or so years. That's a bit of a disaster.
No.
And any idea that we might be intuitive beings, we might have, if you like, psychic abilities, is given to children as an impossibility. It's beyond comprehension. Whereas with luck, particularly if you left school as early as possible, the chances are that you went to nature. I left school at 16 and went out to the desert, and it was such a change, such a shock, if you like, that I remember the first night that I saw the stars in the desert, and oh my God, I thought there were just a few, but there's sort of what appeared to be infinite numbers of stars. And I think, nature is what really changes people and connects people. I mean, a walk in the forest, I would suggest it could be a lovely meditation.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, that's what Harry said. I said it before today. Like, Harry said, if you want peace of mind, go and sit in nature and soak up the hidden energies within nature. The thing is, like, if I went back even 100 years ago, and imagine like I'm there now and I've got a radio, imagine I've got my mobile phone, and I said to, this crowd of people, this phone here, this device, it's designed to pick up the voice of someone 10,000 miles away. I'd have got locked up. Imagine like this is a radio, and I said to like the same group of people, this radio, I can tune it into 1,000 different radio stations right across the world that I'd have got locked up. If I'd have said, I can tune into an energy, because we're designed as human beings to tune into something outside of us, they would have accepted that. But now, they accept this. They accept the radio. What's so strange about accepting the possibility that we can tune into energies? Because it's obvious, isn't it, in a way? Like if somebody walks into a room and they're miserable, what do you feel first? If someone walks into a room and they're happy, what do you feel first? If that's not energy, what is? So if we took that and then we closed our eyes and just slowed our breath down and became still, I wonder, is there a possibility that these energies that want to be close to us have a chance and opportunity to, or not speak to us, but allow us to feel something outside of what we feel today? I mean, that's interesting, isn't it? Harry said this is not an intellectual concept. You can't get this with the intellect. He said it's an experiential teaching that I'm giving you. So I would sit for weeks, months, in tune with this energy. Still am, still do. And whenever I'm depressed or anxious, I have to ask myself, did I move away from that? And the answer will always be, yeah. Why? Because life takes us, in so many different directions. My wife, my kids, my grandkids, my business. And before you know it, what's left? What's left? I've given all my pieces away. And so the disease, the illness is a messenger. It's saying, have I got your attention? No, I'm still doing. Then it'll knock. Have I got your attention now? No. Have I got your attention now? Why? Because he has no other form of language except symptom and expression. So the body's always trying to talk to us, and if we don't listen, it will give us a message in a different way. So depression, anxiety, even the physicality, especially the physicality, but all these are kind of messages to say, just line yourself up. Just line yourself up to this peace. Let's begin there.
So if somebody, and I'm sure everybody listening to this is going to be really taken with what you say, if somebody wanted to come and see you, what might they expect?
Well, a chat like this, really, to see, what is it that you want out with? Let's see, if we're talking about like the holistic therapies, then it'd be more of a consultation. But because this is mainly geared up towards a spiritual healing, then it would be, let's have a chat and lay yourself down, close your eyes for 30 to 40 minutes, and let's see what happens. At the very least, you're going to feel relaxed. At the very best, you'll feel change better. And I'm not saying it's one session. Of course, it's not. Although I've seen some extraordinary things for sure, all I know is that you're going to feel more peaceful. And that peacefulness will have an effect on your mind and your body. Well, I'll settle for that. And if we're doing that each time, a little bit of peace each week, each month, what would happen? You see, imagine everything's a relationship. So if I'm in a relationship with a not very nice person, then someone comes along and shows me kindness. I've got a comparison. So what we start to do is you give the body a comparison. So you mean that stress, that fight and flight, that's not normal? No, it's not. Let me bring you over here to taste something that's normal. And then you move away again and you come back. And I say, let's feel this again. And so we start to develop a comparison in the system, to say, this is the natural state of the human system, is peace. Not what you think, is peace, and all the stress and all the things that you've been doing. Harry said to me, he said, if you spend as much time being as you do doing, you'd be directly connected to the divinity itself. That's true. That is true.
We're human beings we're human doings rather than human beings. That's the thing.
Isn't that? And the clue is in the title, human being. How much time do we spend doing that? Not very often, unless we're forced to. But what if we could incorporate that in our daily practice? I don't mean just a cup of tea. I mean just intentionally taking that time just to sit with yourself and just 5-10 minutes. What difference would that make? It will make a difference. Why? There's a part of us that gives and nurtures to us from the day we were born. That part that makes our fingernails grow, the hair grow, the immune system, the heartbeat, all of that. Guess what it's been doing since the day you were born? Loving you. And it asks for what? Only very little. It gives and it gives and it gives and it gives, and all you need to do is say, thank you. Just thank you for keeping me going. So that part of us that we don't see, that needs nurturing, acknowledging, doesn't it? It needs that, and you deserve that. So I just think it's a big subject, really. It's never linear. It's never one thing. It's open to our interpretation, but we can learn, and we can learn by experience. How fantastic is that?
Well, brilliant. Thank you so much, Stuart. And just before we wind up, unless there are other things you'd like to say, if you could give your websites and perhaps remind them of the name of the book about Harry.
So the website is spiritualhealing.co.uk. And the name of the book is In the Company of Harry. That's it. Yeah. So have a look. I mean, on the website, there's the audio book, which is free. There are loads of meditations, which is free. I mean, go and have a listen, and pick something that resonates with you. And even in the book, you know, you don't need to buy the book. You can listen to it on audio, and something may, you know, come into your day that helps you along. Fantastic. That'll do. And if something coming into your day every day, guess what happens after the end of 365 days? You're going to feel better. That's it. Simple, isn't it, really? Simple doesn't mean it's not profound. It's simple and it's profound.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. So I'll cut it there.
Okay.
That's absolutely fantastic, beautifully delivered. I mean, really, you know, you made a lot of sense. It's good.
Thank you very much. I'm very grateful to you, you know, because I say, you know, you've given me the time of day. There was a man years ago called Jan de Vries. Have you heard of him?
Yeah,
He
yeah.
was a naturopath, and I was just starting out, you know, like, I don't know, a long, long time ago. And I remember I had this lady who she wasn't very well, and I was out my depth with her. I didn't really know what to do with that. And I met him at a show, and I was talking to him about her. And he said, "Here's my email." And I think it was an email or phone number at the time or something like that. He said, write to me. I'll send you a blood sample. I'll send, you know, I'll do a blood analysis for her and send it to you. And I thought, here's a man. He's wrote 20 books. You know, like he's a very eminent man, and he give me the time of day. Now I never forgot that, you know, because like I always think like to be in the presence of humility is a wonderful thing. Humility is the ability to make someone feel special. And these people, they're very few and far between. So like, and I've met a few of them, you know, and I'm grateful that you've given me the time of day to kind of, you know, be able to spread a little bit of a message, because it's important, this, Clive. You know, the world's in a bit of a disarray. And if I can do my little bit in my corner, fantastic, you know, to change that. And this is one route that I'm passionate about, you know, that I think spiritual healing is a beautiful thing. And I've got a big comparison of lots of holistics along the way. You know, I think it's an amazing thing that we can share and be part of. And that gives us a voice, because we haven't got a voice in the normal way anymore. We probably never had, only the illusion of a voice. But now we come together collectively, we have a voice.
And yeah, an answer to why I said yes to talking with you is that I think, you know, the older we get and the more we go down these sort of paths, you know, I don't think about it. It's just intuitive. You basically, doesn't matter whether you haven't met somebody, you don't know what they look like. You know, there is that connection. Obviously, we're all one. You know, so
Yeah.
the more you trust your intuition, the more you get it, I suppose.
Yeah. Sometimes we don't need to know why, do we? I have people come to the centre many, many times. There was one particular lady I remember a few years ago. I had a phone call about 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm locked in, she said. I said, locked in where? I'm locked in the centre, because at the centre where we are, I've got these gates all the way around. And I said, well, it's 1 o'clock. You have to go home, and I'll have to come back in the morning. But there was something in her voice. And I said, wait there. I said, I'll be down. So I come with my wife and traveled about half an hour, got to here, and she was here outside. And she was in a bit of a mess. So I brought her in. And she, on that day, she went to commit suicide. But something in her head, as she drove past the gates, said, turn in here to Birthright Holistic. So she came in about 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, and got locked in. Now, don't you think that's quite amazing? So we spent about 3 or 4 hours talking to her, turning her around, and she came back a month later with a bunch of flowers for my wife and everything. But she never got locked in. What difference would that make? And you think like about the significance of those things that happen, the coincidences like this. We don't know. We don't know what's going to come from this conversation to the right person at the right time. Who are we to know? We can just trust that instinct that you just said. You know, I followed that. It felt the right thing to do. I'll give Stuart the time of day. We don't know. You're an important part of the jigsaw as much as I am in my jigsaw. We don't know.
And I think one of the problems in the world is that people don't recognize their importance in the scheme of things. You know, what can I do? It's all impossible. It's all so huge and difficult. And people have had their self-confidence knocked out of them at school or whatever, and don't realize how what their potential is.
Yeah, because you don't know where it's going to land, do you? I have people like ring me up 2 or 3 years later. Do you remember you said this to me? I have no clue what I said. I couldn't remember what I said yesterday. You know, but we don't know where it's going to land. And that's the beauty. I think what the most important part of that is the way it's given. You know, so like before I did the course, I was going to send it to Harry Edwards and so forth. And I thought they'd look at me and say, "Who are you?" You know, and yet part of it, like I had a message like from this man who said, "Harry's given it to you. If you wanted to give it to them, to give it to them, to give it to you. If you don't take it, it's like saying, 'Thank you very much, I don't need it.'" And I recognized that it was important. And I thought, if I don't do it, who's gonna? Who's going to do it? So I've got to start. I've got to do mine as best as I can. That's it. That's just do my best.